My friends, it is Tuesday, which means it is another episode of the Remodelers on the Rise live show. And today, I know that you guys prefer it when it's just me talking for 30 minutes and I have nobody else to interrupt me because you guys are desperate to hear what does Kyle have to say today. But occasionally, I do need to bring on a guest. I'm joking about all of that. Usually when a guest comes on, you guys like it more. And today I have a guest named Ryan Englin. It's like England without the D, is what I learned. England with Core Matters. Ryan, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
All right. And Ryan and I go way back, like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, we've had 1.5 conversations. But after that first conversation, I said, I need Ryan to come on the Remodelers on the Rise show. He's got value that he can offer my audience. The way that we connected is through a gentleman named Dove Gordon. And I would say there's 2 business decisions that I've made in my going on 13 years in business that have been very important to me. Number 1 is when I said, you know what? I can't be all things to all people. And I stuck my flag in the ground and said, I'm just going to work with remodelers. I know the industry. I love the people in it. I'm just going to do that. And the second best business decision is when I didn't really have the money to do it, but I figured out a way to hire my first business coach, which is Dove Gordon. He's a Jewish man over in Israel. It was an interesting series of events for us to connect. And he really helped me articulate what I do and just give me some clarity, confidence, and tremendous help. And Dove reached out and said, hey, Kyle, you need to know Ryan. And Ryan, you need to know Kyle. And if Dove says that, we listen, right?
And here we are.
So, Ryan, if you were to summarize what you do in your business, how would you summarize it?
Yeah, so we work with blue-collar business owners and help them hire better people faster using our system, what we call the Core Fit hiring system. And our emphasis and our focus is on the technician, the laborer, the craft worker, those frontline employees that are such a challenge to find right now.
Is it a challenge? I think everybody's like, I got way too many really qualified carpenters. I don't know what to do with myself. That's all I hear every day.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. HVAC world, plumbing world, all of that, they all deal with the exact same thing, just too many high qualified people.
Yes, we're being sarcastic, folks. We're being sarcastic. This topic of, we cannot talk about it enough in these times, this idea of you need to be very purposeful and thoughtful with how you recruit, how you attract great employees. It is a problem that so many of you have. Guess what? It's going to be a challenge the rest of this year, next year, the following year. It's going to be a challenge. I would say it's always going to be a challenge in some way for the rest of your career. And just like when you think about Mr. and Mrs. Remodeler, when you think about the sales process, when you think about, I need to be thoughtful about my sales process. I need to have a step-by-step process that helps me qualify people, that helps differentiate myself. I need to put things in place to help me protect my time. I need to work hard to take this prospective remodeling client into a paid project. We're very, very thoughtful about this. But when it comes to recruiting and finding good help, we're very haphazard. And we need to have that same mentality of thoughtfulness and process about that we have on our sales process or maybe our marketing, and have it towards recruiting and finding what Ryan might say is rockstar employees. Ryan, do you agree with that thesis I just put out there?
I do. I tell people all the time, if you just put half the effort into your recruiting practice that you put into your sales and marketing, it would just revolutionize your business. You know, recruiting is a marketing activity. I know it's always given to HR and they always deal with the job descriptions and all that, but recruiting is putting your business in front of job seekers and attracting them to apply. It's the same process that you go through on the lead generation.
Interesting. So we've got a few questions that I'm gonna ask that'll kind of start to seed our conversation, and then I'll kind of ask some follow-up questions. The first one I have here is, why can't, and this is quoting somebody, why can't I find rockstar employees? Why can't, they're not out there? Where are they? I can't find them. What do you say to that?
This is going to be the same thing that your marketer says when you say, why can't I find good customers? The reason you can't find rockstar employees most of the time is because you've never actually defined a rockstar employee. So you're not going to find them. They could walk right by you on the street, but if you haven't defined them, if you don't know who you're looking for, it's going to make it a lot harder to find them.
So how do I find them? How do I define it? How do I define it, Ryan?
Well, the first thing you need to do is figure out, why are you so disappointed with the current workforce out there? You know, one of the things we see a lot is these guys will, I mean, if you get past the interview process and the guys don't ghost you and they actually start the job and then they show up for the first week and they do a decent amount of work, I mean, that's a win for most people. 3-4 weeks later, they all of a sudden don't come back to work. They don't do that. Now you're stuck and you're starting over again. And it's just this vicious cycle that I see business owners get into all the time. And if they would just take a step back and say, you know what, I'm going to spend a little bit more time identifying who the right people are. I'm going to spend a little bit more time getting to know the right people. You'll be able to break that cycle. You know, in some states, it's actually easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire an employee. Most people don't spend 15 minutes on the first date and then propose and go get married. But as employers, we do this all the time. If the guy shows up, like, that's 99% of the interview. And then we ask him a couple of questions. If he looks like he knows how to use some tools, like, we hire him. We know nothing about the person. We know nothing about their behaviors, their drive, whether or not they're going to fit. And so just slowing the process down, getting really clear on who you're looking for, and then interviewing them to make sure that they're the right people.
So if I slow down and I start to think a little bit more strategically, when we think of marketing, a phrase that I like to use is strategy before tactics, right? Strategy before tactics. If I'm going to slow down and be a little bit more thoughtful about the type of employees I'm looking for, how do I define a rockstar employee? What are some of the things that I'm going to do in that slowdown period?
So one of the things that I hear a lot is, I hear this from leaders all the time. I just wish people would care as much as I do. Like, it's this thing, like, they show up, they do a half-assed job, and then they leave, and maybe they come back tomorrow. And they just want people to care. And so slowing down the process and actually having a conversation about, do you actually care about the work that you do? Do you care about the vision of our company, where we're going, what we want to accomplish? There's so much in cultural alignment that is important when you're hiring someone. If you just slow down and have those conversations, you'll be surprised at how many people will actually engage with you and be productive. And productive employees are profitable employees. So that's what we all want.
It's interesting, even are you wanting to, I've got a couple comments here. Michael says, hire slow, fire fast.
I love it.
What do you like about that?
So one of the things that I see a lot of business owners get wrapped up in is, I need the hands. I just need the extra body. And so they're so afraid to fire the person because it was such a challenge just to get them there to begin with. So they deal with complacency and poor performance and all these other issues because they're afraid that if they fire them, they're going to have to start the whole process over. They may not find somebody else. Whereas that person that's not performing well is probably doing more harm than good. So firing them fast frees up your team, frees up your bandwidth to go focus on taking care of your customers and all that. You're not babysitting or having to deal with poor performance from one of your team members.
And I think one way I phrase it is, if you're not active with recruiting, if you're not consistently working to attract people and opportunities, if you're not having, even if you don't have an open position, and correct me if you think this is wrong, even if you don't have an open position, you have an interview this week with somebody. Wait a minute, but I don't have anybody active. I know, it's weird, isn't it? It's because that is an important priority. Because if you have nobody waiting in the wings, one of my clients calls it a simmer list. Like, they're just simmering over there. Hey, I don't have an open position right now, but I would still love to interview. Things change. If you don't have anybody out there, then that crappy employee has all the leverage on you. Because as much as you want to fire them, as much as you do need to realize how big of an impact they're having on the rest of your team and overall morale and productivity, you do still need to get the work done. So you've got to have some other people that you can replace them with sooner rather than later, not feel like you're starting from scratch. So,
well, I think a lot of these guys, they get it from a lead gen perspective. So if you've got 2 or 3 crews and you can work on 2 or 3 projects at a time, you don't wait until the project's over before you say, hey, let's go find another customer. You actually continue to market, you continue to bring people in. You're like, hey, we can't get you on the calendar for a month or for 2 months, but as soon as we are, we're ready to go. I call it a bench. So simmer list, pipeline, but I call it a bench. There's not a sports team on the planet that only has the guys on the field. You got a whole bench of people waiting just to play. And I think the same thing can be applied here is if you had a bench. So we have some clients that have a bench that's 2,000-3,000 names deep. Whew. They do not worry about, so a crew walks off the job site, or they lose somebody, or they lose a foreman. Like they go to the bench, and there's all these people.
2,000 or 3,000, Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I want to hear more about that here in a second, but we've got some questions here, but I want to take this in a different direction, or get your answer to this. If I'm a remodeler, I do kitchens, baths, I've got a team of six team members. What does a proper system look like? If I'm actually going to, because if you ask me that on the sales process, I would be able to go, well, we need to have this and this and this. We need this in place. I'd be able to kind of point to it. From your expertise, your training, coaching, and what you would do for a person that I just described, what does that system look like? Where would you start, and what do they need? What pieces do they need to put in place? I'd love to get clear with that.
Yeah, I'll break it down into really 3 high-level sections here, things to think about. So one of the things that I believe is that if you want to attract better people, you have to become the company that is attractive to better people.
Can you please say that again?
If you want to attract better people, you have to become the company that is attractive to better people. So it's like this idea. I've been with my wife almost 25 years. Well, if I was going back on the dating scene and I wanted to attract someone, I'd probably get some new clothes. I'd probably get a haircut, maybe take a shower. Like I put some effort into being more attractive. And it's the same thing that I see with companies. They attract poor quality people. They don't work out, but they don't take a second to step back and say, well, let me look at myself. What about me is attracting these poor quality people? What can I do to improve? So the first thing to do is to get very, very clear on who you are as an organization. And that boils down to culture, your vision, your values, and your purpose.
And that is very, very underutilized, very not talked. And I'll take some of the blame for that. I don't talk about it near enough. But what you're saying there is if you want to recruit better, you've got to start with some foundational strategic thought. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing happens in sales and marketing, right? What's the first thing you do is you look at the website and say, where's pictures of your projects? Where's the befores and afters? Like you're not going to attract people if you just have a name. So it's the same thing.
Hang on. Michael is requesting, like, I'm professionally conducting an interview here. And he's like, hey, Kyle, while you're thinking about the next question, engaging the audience, can you also type that out for us? Fine, I will do that. Because the people want it. We need to hear that line one more time. The first thing we need to do is what?
Get really clear on our culture, who we are as an organization. Really clear. Vision, values, purpose. The modern workforce has traded a paycheck for a purpose. So if you look at the baby boomers, you look at Gen X, they were focused on long-term employment, get a pension, get a retirement plan, all that. Today's workforce, if they work for you for 3 months and you got a lot of good value from them in 3 months, like that's a win because they'll move on. They'll go do the next thing. And so they're really more focused on purpose. What value are you bringing to the community or to your clients? What makes them get out of bed in the morning and say, hey, I'm making a difference? Got to get really clear on that as an organization first. So that's the first thing to do. The second thing to do is get really clear on where you go find these people. So I hear a lot of people like, oh, I want to go get some really amazing salmon. Like I use fishing analogies a lot. Like I want to go catch some salmon.
That marriage one you were going with, I think you need to work on that one because like if I'm gonna, I was back on the dating scene. Like if I'm your wife, I'm like, what's he talking about? Like, I feel like you can work on that analogy. That was a dangerous one, Mr.
After 25 years, we're good. We're good. Okay. We're not going anywhere. But
now time out. Because the number is 25, I can't help but flex some of my musical theater acumen. What musical, people listening, what musical is talking about marriage? And it says, after 25 years, it's nice to know. What musical is that lyric from? If you do that, you can have access to Ryan's recruiting and transformational Find the Rockstar Employee training for free, he said. Is that right?
I don't even know the answer to that. So I didn't even know there was a musical for that.
It's famous.
Okay. But I think the thing is you got to become the company that's attractive to higher quality people. And then you got to get really clear. So if I want to go on a fishing trip and I want to go catch some salmon, but I go down to the canal here, inner city, and I keep catching all these bottom feeders. And I'm like, where's the salmon at? Well, they're not in the canal. I'll just be clear about that. Here's the thing about job seekers. Only about 3% of job seekers are active job seekers at any one period of time. They're on the job boards. There's some 60 to 70% of people that want a new job, but they're not on the job boards. So if that's where you're fishing, you need to go fish somewhere else if you want to find the higher quality people. So that's the second thing. Get really clear on where those high quality people are. And then the third thing is automate the process.
Hey, Ryan, you're picking it up now. Yeah. We're doing a live show, but we've got to be with the people at the same time. So I don't think you're going to be thrown off. You're going to do number 3, but somebody had a guess. I'm assuming Hamilton. Personally, I find that insulting because people that have followed my show and my work, they know that I'm a big Hamilton fan, but they think I'm a one-trick pony. They're like, oh, he's got Hamilton memorized. That must be all he knows when it comes to musical theater. I also feel the need to say, look, I know my fair share of musical theater. I married a music major. Like, that's where it comes from. My sister is big into musical theater. I was also the captain of the baseball team. Lest people think like they're forming a picture in their mind. Like, you can't put a label on me. Captain of the baseball team and knows musicals? No, Hamilton is wrong. Yes, correct. You're wrong. But you can keep trying. Okay. So number 3, the third part that you need to get really clear about is what?
Automating the process.
Automating the process.
So here's the number one challenge that I have when talking with my clients is I say, hey, how many applications did you get last week? And they're like, I got 2. I go, you're going to implement our system and you're going to get 100. And they're like, I don't want to implement your system. I could barely have enough time to get through 2. So there are some tools out there that companies can employ, much like a CRM. So I'm sure you talk about CRMs in your business, right? Mm-hmm. Helps you manage your client relationship, helps you manage your prospects. There's a system out there. It's called an applicant tracking system. And what it does is it'll help you manage your applicants. It'll help you to expand your reach, get more people coming in so that you get to actually filter out some of the higher quality people. So you won't feel as desperate. I got 2 applicants and I got a position to fill. I got to hire 1 of them. Imagine if you had 100 applicants and you had a system saying, here are the 3 rock stars you need to talk to. And then you talk to those 3. I mean, that's you're just throwing a bigger net. And so, so we recommend a software platform called Career Plug. We put all of our clients on it. It's an amazing system. Really great for blue collar companies. In fact, most of the clients that they have are in the home services space. So they understand what the needs of those employers are. Cool.
So let me circle back. A couple things here. You know, like attracts like. The company is a mess, and so the people attracted to it are a mess. It's very true. I have one client in particular, a longtime client of mine, who was at that point several years back where he's like, you know, I need help and I need these employees and we've got too much work, but I have to put my foot down and say enough is enough. If this is how this team performs, if this is how they're going to interact with clients, I'd rather have the pain of figuring out how I'm going to get this work done than let them continue to be a cancer on my team. And even without a safety net behind him, adios, I've got to change it. Number 1, the team that was left, all of a sudden, breath of fresh air, like something's new. And he's been very purposeful with doing some of the things that we're talking about of really recruiting. But what he has seen is when you get A players on your team, when you crack the code a little bit, A players like to work around other A players and they start recruiting, and like attracts like. So what Michael said is very true there. This is what you said earlier. The first thing we need to do is get really clear on our culture and who we are as an organization. I don't want us to overlook that one. Literally, the first thing this expert who knows how to recruit said to us, people, is we've got to get clear on culture and who we are as an organization. But that bores us. That's hard work. That's introspection. But it's the same thing. If we look and talk and act the same as everybody else, if we don't stand for anything, if we don't have a clear mission of who we are as a business, what we're about, where we're going, we're not going to get people to rally and want to join our team. That doesn't happen overnight. But this topic, this thought of what kind of culture do we have is something we need to spend more time on. And then Michael quoted you and said, we have traded a paycheck for a purpose. Whew. Sometimes I say things and I see them in quote form. I'm like, wow, who said that? That's really smart. You might be thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
That's that looks really good, right? So we emphasize point number one. I want to go back to point number two. And again, my question was around, if I'm a remodeler, what are the pieces that I need to work on these topics that I'm talking about? And the second thing you said is number two, we got to get really clear with where to find these people. And I loved what you were saying of the fishing analogy. That made total sense. And you also reminded us of that fact of there's 60-70% of people out there that are wanting to change career, wanting to change job, but they're just kind of sitting there and idle. So can you dig into a little bit more of where do we find these people?
So a couple of things to remember when someone's looking for a job. Switching jobs is one of life's most stressful events. So you may have seen this list, like top 10 most stressful things: divorce, death of a loved one.
Public speaking.
Switching jobs is on that list. I would argue that there's not a single person on the planet that wants to put them through that level of stress for 25 cents more an hour. But we always hear that as an excuse. So they left me for 50 cents more an hour. Nobody is going to put their family through that level of stress or uncertainty for 50 cents more an hour. And the other thing to remember is that people don't leave jobs. People leave managers. So if I'm a carpenter and I go to another company to be a carpenter, I didn't switch jobs. I'm still a carpenter. What I did was I switched managers, I switched leadership teams, I switched cultures. So the thing to remember about job seekers is that there are a lot of people out there that don't feel like they belong. They come in, they put in a good day's work because they have that work ethic, and the pain of staying the same is not greater than the pain of change. So they're looking at this fact of having to find another job, and they're just like, it's too much pain. I can deal with this. It's not the end of the world. I'll push through. And those are the people we need to get in front of. The way you get in front of them is the same way you get in front of your customers. You have to market your business. You have to promote your business. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to find those A players you were talking about and give them the tools to promote you to their friends. Because here's the thing about, one of the listeners said this, right? Like attracts like. A players like to hang out with A players. A players like to work with A players. You had said it, you get rid of one of those C players, one of those people that you finally ready to hire, and the whole team is like, oh, they're lifted up. Because those A players are usually brought down to B players. You're dealing with the C players. And so when you get really clear on who your A players are, and you give them the tools to market and promote your business to other A players, you'll have a steady stream of employee referrals, and you'll never struggle to hire again.
You know, I think what I'm hearing is I never want to re-listen. I rarely re-listen to episodes or whatnot. I kind of move on to the next thing. But I almost want to re-listen to this because we've got a problem. The problem is we're not attracting the talent we need. They're not out there. And I feel like you're coming at this from just a totally different approach of going, the answer is not just keep posting. The answer isn't even like, just put this little word in your ad. It is way more holistic than that. It is way bigger than that. If we're actually going to solve it in a meaningful, long-term way, we got to look at it totally different. Remember when I gave Michael a hard time of saying, Michael, why don't you type this stuff up? He is embracing it. Michael was an amazing personal assistant. He's got many, many skills. People don't leave jobs, they leave managers. He heard that loud and clear. That stood out to me as well. They don't switch jobs, they switch cultures. Yeah. Give your dude, look at this guy. Give your A players the tools to promote your business to other A players. That's a solid philosophy and way of thinking. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things we can embrace that. Give me one other way that we find these folks. What's another one of your favorite ways?
Yeah. So one of the things that we find is that a lot of times we talk to companies and they're spending a ton of money on Indeed. They're spending a ton of money on ZipRecruiter or these other job boards, and they're not getting the results they want. And what we find is that if they take those advertising dollars and they move them into promoting their business from a culture perspective, one of the cool side effects is those same advertising dollars that you were putting into finding the low quality employees now actually not only helps you attract higher quality employees, but it helps you attract higher quality customers. Because the reality is your customers want to work with A players. They don't want to work with C players. So if you got A players on your team and you're advertising for A players, that's very attractive to customers because they're like, hey, if that's the kind of people they hire, that's the kind of people I want in my house.
And good marketing attracts and repels. It attracts the right clients. The other thing that you just mentioned, and I think there's a little bit of an analogy here. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't post on Indeed or we don't post at certain job boards, or maybe you would argue with that. But on the marketing side, if we're just paying for advertising on Home Advisor, we know what we're going to get, bottom feeders. If we're actually marketing our business in a variety of ways that really document our process, show what we're about, really build value and show off our expertise, it's going to, over time, it takes longer. Over time, we're going to attract the type of prospects that we want on jobs. And similarly, on the recruiting side, if we just throw an ad together and post it here, post it there, we're going to end up with a lot of just crummy catch. I'm going to use your fishing analogy.
Cool.
We throw those lines out there. We start reeling in. We're not going to be impressed with the fishies at the end of that. I think that's what you said earlier. But if we're much more thoughtful, a little bit more strategic about it over time, that's going to attract the right client, the right employees. Okay, good. What's another nugget of wisdom that you should share? Now, 30 minutes goes quick. We got 4 minutes or so. Might go a minute or two later. Does anybody have any specific questions for Ryan, whether you're listening to this live or on the recording where you can type a comment in? Please put that in there. So any questions Ryan, I want you to kind of share, if people are interested in knowing more about you, where they go. And then what's another nugget of wisdom that you think people need to hear?
Rethink your job description. The job description is a marketing piece. It's not compliance. It's not HR. It's not how you hold people accountable. It is a marketing piece. So when we write job descriptions, they're 1,500, 2,000 words long. They read like a very, very long blog article. Goes into who we're looking for, the kind of culture we have, the kind of impact and alignment to the purpose. Let's get really clear on those things, because remember, people aren't looking for another carpentry job. They're looking for a new leadership team to work for. Over 60% of job seekers will say the number one thing missing from a job description is who they're going to be working for. If people aren't leaving jobs or leaving managers, do they really want to jump out of the frying pan into the fryer?
Well, even just that punchline about the top, are you looking for a new leadership team? That sounds different. That reads different. The concept, and I never really thought about that. The concept of, if you're interviewed and you're hired, here's who you're going to work for. Let me tell you about Tom. Tom is an amazing project manager. He's been with us for 25 years. He commands the respect of his team employees. They love him. Might even put a testimonial or two from a couple employees talking about how wonderful Tom is. Interesting concept there.
Yeah. We talk about the 3 main videos that everybody should make when it comes to recruiting. One is around your core story. I don't have time to dig into that one right now, but if you can share your core story, that will really align a lot of people to your culture. The second one is a recruiting video where your employees are talking about the culture that you have and everything else. And then finally, the last one is testimonials from your employees, and include those in your job description. There's no reason that you can't put those in your job description.
Let me transition this again. Hey, if you're going to market your business, you should have a video that has your core business story. People want to know who you are. Marketing is getting someone as a need to know, like, and trust you. What was the second one?
The recruiting video. So this is more of a call to action video. Here's what it's like to work here. Come join our team. We're really looking for 8 players. I was trying to
be clever and kind of compare it, right? From a marketing standpoint, the third video, we're talking about employee testimonials. Well, guess what? It makes sense to have client testimonials. We all get and understand why that's important on the marketing side. We need to move that same philosophy, that same thought process over to the recruiting. It's stinking hard work. What you're describing is not a shortcut. What you're describing is not I just plug this in and it's done. You actually have to think strategically. You have to put some money behind getting it written, getting the training. You have to put some money behind getting some professional videos done. But don't tell me for a second that going through the process that you're describing and that we're talking about here is not going to bear different results than this haphazard, let's throw things against the wall and see what sticks. Yeah. A good stinking episode, Ryan.
Thanks. I got one last thing real quick. For those of you out there that are listening that are struggling with, but this is going to be a lot of work. Like Kyle's saying, we're going to have to rethink the way we invest. Here's the thing. I want to go back to this. Your good employees will take good care of your customers, and good customers will take care of your brand, social proof, reviews, referrals, those kinds of things. So Don't think for a second that you have to create this whole new marketing strategy just for recruiting. If you have solid A players on your team and you've got a good recruiting strategy and good recruiting systems, good employees will attract good customers, and good customers will take care of filling your pipeline.
Bam. Bam.
30 minutes.
30 minutes, done. How do people hear more from you if they would like to hear more from you?
Yeah, I'm an easy guy to find. You just Google me. But thecorematters.com is our website. I also have a podcast over at bluecollarculture.com.
I forgot you also have a pod. I mean, we know each other for so long, but I forgot that's the original. Why is it thecorematters.com and not corematters.com, Ryan?
Well, the name of the company is corematters.com, but apparently matters has something to do with the legal field. So whoever owns corematters.com thinks it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, you mentioned the number. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, we'll just put a V in front of that, not buy that.
Play on words works because the core matters of your business is what's going to build that cultural foundation.
You're just saying that because you didn't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on the core matters, so you've justified.
Yeah, I'm a marketing guy. I figured out how to spend that all day long.
Good. Yeah. We had a good time here. I think there's going to be another time that we're going to maybe do this again on maybe some real specific topics. And I appreciate your time. Some might say that was even a powerful episode. Michael, thank you for all that typing up, by the way. And thanks for everybody else who dialed in live. We'll do another Remodelers on the Rise on Thursday. I do believe I have another guest. I think Mike Medford is coming on, and we'll be looking at some specific ways to handle what I love, which is doing job costing well. I mean, Ryan, this recruiting stuff is exciting, but job costing, it's where it's at, man. It's where it's at.
I'll trust you on that one.
Good. Thank you for adjusting and realigning and making us think about this important topic differently. You did a fantastic job. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.